All right, so everybody's coming online. Give everybody a chance to kind of join us here. While we're getting everybody online and joining up the webinar, I'll remind everybody this is a recorded webinar. We'll send out the recording, but this is an interactive webinar, meaning that you can participate with us by either asking questions through the Q&A or dropping some stuff into the chat. Now, our preference is always for you to put things into the Q&A because it's much easier for me as the moderator to collect and disseminate and ask those questions. So we're going to jump into things, and I'm going to do things a little bit different today because we're going to cover a whole bunch of information. And that is that when you guys speak for the first time, take a second and introduce yourself, as opposed to us taking like 10 minutes to introduce everybody. And I'm going to start by launching a poll question and talking about like Q4 readiness, right? So where are we at with like our Q4 readiness, and like what are we prepared for? What are we not prepared for? Jessica, why don't you kind of kick us off? You've kind of been preparing our team in terms of Q4. Like what are your thoughts around Q4 and maybe deadlines and inventory and how things are different this year? Kick us off a little bit in talking about this Q4 preparedness idea.
Sure. So first off, I'm Jessica Wright. I joined the Seller Labs team back in March to bring some Amazon operational processes. So that's my contribution here. Q4 this year is definitely going to be different. Lots of different theories coming from lots of different places, and I think they're all probably going to be correct. There's going to be a little bit of everything. We are expecting shoppers earlier. We are expecting whoever has the stock to be, the one who wins the season, and expecting strategies both for dropping prices as well as raising prices, to get a little bit more out of a little bit of stock you have. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a crazy mix of just everybody having to try some different strategies to make it work with what you've got to work with this year.
Do any of you can jump in on this? Do any of you think that sellers are going to take the attitude of, hold the line and then be the one standing at the end when everybody else runs out of inventory, that they're going to be able to sell because they've got stuff left? Or do you think it's going to be kind of this mad rush of, sell your products because, the buyers are out there and the buyers are buying earlier and earlier, right? Amazon's holiday return period has already started, right? It's October. I'm sure that the Halloween people love that you can like return up until January. But it's already started. Ed, you got any thoughts on that?
I think the biggest thing is, people are going to kind of hold the line as much as possible. There's been lots of oddities happening with IPI, for instance, and the restock limits and things like that. So people are trying to work the system as much as possible to make sure they're moving things around where they have inventory to last. And this may mean that they're only sending in smaller batches of items whenever they do have the availability to do so. But I kind of think it's going to be also a rush at the same time, where they're trying to get their sell-through as much as possible and keep that velocity going. Since the holiday season is technically starting earlier, quote unquote, and even Amazon is doing deals already, everyone's kind of following through with that as well and doing deals earlier and pushing advertising a lot earlier as well. So it's kind of a combination of people rushing to get as much traffic as possible, but they're having to do this like balancing act of like, okay, I can't push too hard because I may not have any inventory when it really matters down the road. So it's a good balancing act that we're watching, and we're seeing lots of our clients especially having to deal with it already, and even last month dealing with it already too.
So Will, are you already starting to see the budgets increase for ads, or the spend increase for that ads, or is it not really yet?
I want to encourage people to do it. And when interacting with clients, I do actively encourage them, but a lot of people that I work with, at least, are coming up with reasons why they are not doing it yet. And I don't necessarily consider that to be wise. I do think that ad spend is better sorted out early on, but I can understand some hesitation because you don't know what's going to happen with that spend, especially now. As Edward mentioned, The holiday season has already started. And as you yourself mentioned, the holiday season has already started. So where your ads are going to succeed needs to be figured out as soon as possible. And part of that is going to be increasing those budgets.
So yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Julia.
Yeah, kind of going off of that. By the way, I'm Julia. I'm a senior account manager on the managed services team, but I think it is expected that you will see an increase in your cost per click in the holiday season, specifically because there are some sellers that only advertise in Q4, which is not recommended, but it does happen. So there is just going to be inevitably more competition in your space.
Brett, talk to me a little bit about inventory, right? So you used to work for a very large Amazon seller. You've been running the managed services group for a number of years now. Amazon, we're going to get into IPI score and all of that in a little bit, but like Amazon has put all these dates up, right? Have inventory shipped by November 1st if you want to sell it for Black Friday. Have it, shipped by November 15th if you want to have it for the Christmas rush. Do you foresee Amazon having the same types of backups that they had last year, where everything was extremely delayed in its ability to get out? Or do you think sellers are going to be able to get inventory in at the last minute? How are you kind of planning, or what are you thinking? And ultimately, like, what do I do if I missed one of these deadlines? Am I in trouble?
Yeah, the interesting thing about Amazon is it's always been an abundance play. There's always another offer. There's always another option. There's a million different waste baskets and a million different basketballs. So customers have always had the ability to pick and choose, and they've got a lot of options to pick from. This is changing. Right now, scarcity is another factor due to these supply chain backups and restock limits, et cetera, that's causing brands to have to look at business strategy a little differently. And they're having to adapt from looking at their entire catalog as an abundance play, where price matters a lot more and these up and down movements start to affect the market as a whole, to more of a scarcity play, where you have to be conservative with how you apply your ad budget and how you apply all of your inventory. You can't overstock on new products because that's going to affect your ability to restock your top sellers. So I think the brands that are going to do it best have already started seeing this and already started compensating for it. They're looking 6 months out. They're not thinking about Q4 right now. They've already got it baked. I think if you've already missed these dates, the best you can do is hope for additional increases in your restock limits or your storage limits so you can get more inventory in. But really, it's going to be playing it last minute and making sure you have the opportunity to send in whatever is going to maximize your revenue potential in Q4. I think you're muted, Jeff.
My dog was barking, so I muted. I put a question up about inventory to try to get an understanding of where people are at with their inventory. It looks like most people already have their inventory in stock, which is great. I think ultimately you won't know for a while whether you have enough, but around 85% of people have all of their inventory already in stock. But it's interesting, Amazon with IPI score. Leading up to the end of September, Amazon really pushed IPI score, and they said if your score is not over 450, you're going to get restock limits, you're going to get higher fees. And then like the third week of September, Amazon did this like massive correction to IPI score, and everyone's IPI score changed one direction. And then all of a sudden they kind of locked IPI score in maybe like 2 weeks before the end of the month. And then like the first week of October, everyone's restock limits changed. Right. So I would say like we've settled, but maybe was it not as bad as what people thought? And maybe thoughts as to why. Most sellers I've seen, most brands I've talked to, their restock limits increased from that adjustment that happened in October.
I think that a lot of sellers. Oh,
go ahead. Go ahead, Will.
Okay. I think that a lot of sellers were put into a tricky situation by those restock limits put in place earlier this year. Basically, Amazon is always basing things on data. Generally, if you sell well, Amazon treats you better. And this limit, or these limits put in place earlier this year, had to force people to choose, do I want to continue to have steady stock and steady inventory, or do I want to try and sell as quickly as possible and then struggle to get more inventory back in? And then if you sold well, I think finally we're starting to see Amazon's algorithm catch up and say, oh, well, you sold well, now let's push these up. Now it could just be a rising tide raising all ships, where Amazon basically is saying, okay, with these limits in place, we may not continue to see sellers staying on the platform, which is another balancing act that Amazon has to continue to maintain.
And you have to throw this in here, right? Because restock is one of their key components of the IPI score. And a lot of people can't restock, right? Like, so they're being penalized because of the supply chain that's occurring. And I, quite frankly, I think that this is my own interpretation. I don't have any like crystal ball into Amazon. I think Amazon ran their calculation for restock limits. And then after they did that, they probably have some like big computer system that says, oh, we still have more room in our warehouse. Let's run an adjustment. People can put more stuff in the warehouse. Jessica?
Yeah, I think it was probably a combination of that and the fact that we've just entered Q4. So the reason I think this is my interpretation, that people saw a big bump, at the beginning of October, was because their restock limits were adjusted in relation to the season. So everyone kind of saw that bump, or most sellers saw that bump, because this 3-month period is a higher velocity period. So you kind of got a lift from that, but the question will remain as the season unfolds, is that enough? Great, you've got 1,000 extra units now. Is that going to be enough to get you through the season? Or are you going to find yourself in a crunch again mid-November?
What are other things that are kind of sitting out there? You guys are dealing with hundreds of brands on a daily basis. What are other things that are sitting on the minds of Amazon sellers, brand owners, this Q4 that's maybe different than other Q4s?
One that sticks out to me, Jeff, is around advertising, and it's the new tools that are available for sellers. Everything from a more robust sponsored display tool set to new features inside a sponsored brand and sponsored brand videos. All of these new complexities are causing brands to have to look elsewhere to achieve these things. So they're having to find a videographer and spend time doing that, whereas normally they might just be focused on new product development or other things. So I think that, compounded with the supply chain disruptions, has really caused a lot of brands to kind of lose focus. I think this is a perfect opportunity for them to refocus on the areas that are actually profitable and going to help them grow, and maybe do away with some of the stuff that seemed really great earlier in the year but hasn't really panned out.
Yeah, and I'd actually like to add on to that really fast, because that's a really good point. I think now is the time for a lot of sellers to really look at what they've done throughout the years, just like Brett said, and like really say, okay, what's worked, what hasn't worked? Because now is the time to focus on things that have worked, and especially focus on the products that are selling. Something I say almost every year when we talk about this is, now is not the time to try to push products that have not sold well throughout the rest of the year. That is just going to lead to a lot of wasted ad spend, a lot of you being frustrated because you're like, oh, more eyes on Amazon. This product should like really sell now. That's not necessarily the case. So it is a time to look back at the ad types that have worked for you, the products that have worked for you, and really focus on those and double down where you're seeing a good return across the board for sure.
Well, I think you can revisit products that maybe haven't sold well throughout the year. I just think that you have to take a different attitude towards those. You can't just think, oh, they're just going to sell. Like you maybe need to refresh your listing. You maybe need to, change your photography. You need to do something dramatic to them to kind of boost them back up. The other thing that I think is critical, and I'd be curious to get your feedback on kind of how you guys track this, is how you look at, track, and react to your competitors. So when you guys are, when you're looking at not just the brands that you manage, but the competitors of those brands, how does that buy in or build into the strategy you're working on?
Yeah, competitors always, take up some of our brain space. They're always taking up some of our time because we have to look at them. We have to assess their listings. Most cases, we're targeting them as well. And so whether it's a direct brand target or it's just related category keywords that we're both competing against, or they're ASINs that we're directly targeting, they're always a part of that equation. And they're usually a really great opportunity for stealing some sales from your competition, as long as you're kind of in parity with the social proof around your listing. So your reviews and your ratings are similar. They don't have to match neck and neck, but they shouldn't be so far off that you're not even in the same ballpark. I think if you can look at them in that light and make sure you're focused on the right competition and not just somebody new on the market, you can do really well. But I think it does bring up an interesting question, Jeff. As you start advertising those underwhelming products or those ones that haven't done historically, I think this year you're going to have to do a lot more work to assess whether that was an artificial gain due to scarcity on the market, or that was an actual success story that you can piggyback on and grow on in years to come.
Yeah, I was talking with an Amazon seller the other day, and what she was telling me was that she doesn't trust any of the keyword research data that's out there. And I think in general, keyword research data has always been algorithms that software providers like us have created, right? It's not, none of it, nobody has any absolute numbers behind what they do. It's a combination of quite a few things that make up those numbers that are there. And her argument was that there's so many things at play that are driving artificially a BSR ranking or a category ranking that is something totally out of it can't be built into an algorithm, right? Because somebody could have been doing really, really well, but then they went out of stock and then they came back, and it's impossible to truly know what's happened to identify keywords and opportunities, and you have to look at more like rolling trends than you can look at more of like the absolutes that you might have been 2 years ago able to depend on.
I 100% agree with that. We've got plenty of examples within our client scope that the Amazon customer will make decisions that you're not ready for, and you need to be ready for those things you're not ready for. Basically, for example, we had somebody selling something. I'm sure everybody's seen the movie. Well, maybe not. But there's a movie called Tommy Boy featuring a fictional company called Callahan. And when one of the actors from that movie was in the news, suddenly one of our clients was selling something that said Callahan. They were blowing up and he couldn't figure it out. And I had to say, oh, it's because this guy was in the news. And suddenly you're getting all this traffic you didn't expect. Be aware of what's going on. Even if it's not directly related to your product category, there could be something about your product that attracts people that you weren't aware of.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar, a good tool that you can use to research that is Google Trends, because that'll kind of show you what's kind of trending, and it's a cool tool because you could put Callahan into that tool, and then you're going to see that searches for Callahan have spiked, and you'll see about when they spiked. And so everything isn't just about what's happening on Amazon, but it's what's happening in the world, right? So look at like Squid Games as an example, right? It's like some of the top searches on Amazon is all related to Squid Games. So if you happen to have a product that had the word squid and games in it, then all of a sudden, like your search volume and your impressions and maybe even your ads have skyrocketed, but maybe your sales haven't followed because somebody was actually looking for something related to the Netflix series, not to what you in particular had. And I think we see that a lot, and they're not artificial, right? But they're not like a natural like rise that's occurring because of the holiday season. So Julia, talk to me a little bit about how I prepare my listing, right? So I'm rolling into the holiday season and I need to look at my listing. Maybe give me some tips on like how to audit my listing to determine whether it needs a little bit of help.
Yeah, definitely take a look at your listing, and like we were talking about earlier, comparing it to your competition, see what they're doing and that what you're not doing. Another thing that you could do going into the holiday season is maybe peppering in some giftable or holiday terms to your bullet points so you can start indexing for more things like that.
Anybody have any other tips they want to kind of add on preparing your listings for holidays?
I will say, guess what? You use your advertising data because I'm an advertising nerd. One thing I always like to do is look at the search term reports for the auto campaigns and see if my listing is validated, if I'm actually getting the type of traffic that I want to, or see if there are these random terms coming through that I don't want to show up for. Then you should go back to your listing, reassess it, and see why you're actually indexing for those terms. So I always take advantage of Amazon's data to get some actual numbers of where the traffic is coming from for those search terms and see exactly if it makes sense or if it's just some terms I need to make sure I'm not showing up for going forward.
And
Another one,
yeah, go ahead, Brett.
another one I love is merchandising your store. So you can add custom images, all sorts of text and stuff on there. There are some restrictions around promotional content for holidays, but you can read Amazon's policies on how to stay compliant with that. But the other application of that is once you have dedicated pages for your seasonal products, then you can run a store spotlight ad using sponsored brand, and you can showcase those categories of products that you feel are seasonal. So maybe it's yard decorations, indoor decorations, and party accessories. If those are the things you sell, you could really easily give customers an idea of everything you offer. And you do it right at the top of search to make sure you're the first person getting discovered.
So Jessica, how critical is it to do this listing update, and like maybe when should it be occurring?
So, I mean, now is definitely a good time. Before now was even better. But it's definitely critical. I think that you are going to, you can even do A/B testing if you're a registered brand and see kind of what the difference is performing to judge for yourself how critical it truly is. But getting the right terms in there, to optimize both for your ads, but also for your organic results. That's the key. If you're updating those listings, that's where you're going to land higher in the organic for the holiday season, and a big part of the battle.
And what about photography? Should I be changing my images to be seasonal?
I think it's definitely helpful if you can, while staying compliant with, the guidelines for images.
Yeah. And when we look at this, so like we get into like updating our listing, and then that rolls into like updating our A+ content and into our storefront. So how critical is it that kind of all of this matches across the board?
Oh man, 100%, very important. Like it's just all about branding, brand awareness, and showing off the same type of even the color scheme across the board. It's all about a mentality, I think, for the shoppers where they know who you are as a brand and how everything matches up together. It makes their experience way more fluid, where they understand like, okay, I went from this listing to the store and everything looks the same. This is really enjoyable. This brand has everything together. They're doing a great job. I want to buy it from them, as opposed to someone who's kind of all over the place and doesn't have that brand presence that's really strong on Amazon. I think it's really important. It's something I look for on Amazon, but I'm an outlier because I spend hours searching for a product on Amazon before I purchase, and I take all that into account for sure.
So I'm going to change your wording around a little bit, right? And I'm going to say that I don't think a lot of people look at the product detail, the store, and the A+ content and go, "Oh, this brand has it together." But I do think that somebody will look at all of those and will lose faith in the brand if they're not connected. And so in my mind, it's not necessarily, maybe you look at it in that way, and I don't want to take that away from you, but I think the average consumer is looking to build confidence in what they're buying and confidence in what they're in how they're trying to shop, and that connectivity amongst everything that you do builds that confidence. So Brett, talk a little bit about tying that confidence of the Amazon experience to maybe the online experience, and how that kind of impacts how the shopper, mentality works when it's jumping between Amazon and your website or even other places you sell product?
Yeah, we do know from Amazon's own releases that a large number of customers use Amazon as a research platform to determine whether or not they want to buy something. They might be standing in the aisle at Target ready to buy, and they're going to pull out their phone and look up the product on Amazon to see if it's cheaper, if there's bad reviews that might convince them not to buy, et cetera. And so that omni experience has really become more and more blended. And it's so critical for brands to be thinking about building a solid foundation that's scalable to make sure that you're applying assets across different properties. So if you've got a video you made for your website, you shouldn't just be thinking of that video as your website video. That should be automatically assumed to be some social media content, a listing asset to go on your Amazon listing, perhaps everywhere else that you distribute your product. If you've got wholesale distributors, get that in their hands as well so that they have all of those pieces of marketing collateral that can really help the engine get going faster.
I almost talked without unmuting again. Let's roll into advertising, right? So you guys are kind of it's your specialty, right? That's what you guys kind of do on a daily basis. As I'm preparing for Q4, what's the first thing I need to do in like preparing my ads or my ad strategy for the holiday season?
I'll say,
go ahead.
Okay, I'll just really fast. Do a cleanup. Oh man, clean up your ads.
I feel like we could pull an old school webinar out that you and I did on this like 4 years ago. That's probably still relevant.
Yes, it's just like cleaning up your house before you have guests come over. Like, make sure you're not going to have a lot of wasted ad spend going into the holiday season.
Okay, so let's break this down.
Hasn't worked. Yeah,
let's break this down. Cleanup. Give me whoever wants to, or maybe we'll go around. Give me like something I should clean up in my ads, and maybe if you could give me a little detail on how to do it.
I would say negate keywords or search terms in the auto campaign that have spend but no clicks or conversions, or no conversions rather.
All right, so look for keywords in the auto campaigns that have clicks with no conversions, and do what? Negative them?
Negate them, yeah.
Yep, negate them. Okay. Anybody else want to throw out another cleanup tip? I didn't prepare these guys for this, so I'm kind of putting them on the spot.
There's a very similar one to what Julia mentioned, and it's on your manual campaigns. You may have added keywords to those at some point that saw success in the past. You need to double check and make sure they're still seeing success. You could have had them in there for a year and things have changed enough to where you're still getting clicks, but no sales on those either.
All right, so go back to manual keywords. And what am I looking for when I'm looking at those manual keywords? What's going to maybe be like a super identifier that they're there, right?
To me, I mean, it's all about, and I hesitate to even bring up ACOS on this conversation because I tend to try and direct people into other things. But if you see terms in there or keywords rather, that you've added, and you look at year to date, oh, well, look, the ACOS is like 5%. That's fantastic. It's getting tons. And then you look at the last 2 months, and then you see, oh, well, actually, there's been no conversions in that amount of time and lots of clicks and lots of spend. You need to pause that at the very least.
Gotcha. So you're looking at the keyword level, and at the keyword level, you're looking at a 60 or a 90-day window, and the ACOS looks great, but then you shrink it to a 7, a 14-day window, and you realize, but as of lately, it's not working.
Right. Especially when compared to overall traffic, because traffic is only going to rise as we continue through Q4. And if you've seen traffic going up in recent history and sales not following that trajectory, you need to pause those and revisit them later.
Yeah, and only 30% of you have already done your cleanups and preparations for ads. Any other tips while we're on this of cleanup? I guess Ed's got to throw one out since he started it.
I got to. I would say, so look at the products you're advertising, guys. Come on. if it hasn't gotten sales, why are you still spending money on it? Be honest with yourself, because you can have this mentality where you say, if I get one sale, my ACoS will drop tremendously. That's cool, man, but it's been 90 days and you spent thousands of dollars and haven't gotten a sale. Be honest with yourself. Look at your products you're advertising. Some of them may not be fit for advertising for the time being. Pause them inside the campaigns, reassess the listings, see what's going on there, see why you're not getting conversions, do the changes, and maybe reactivate them inside your advertising. But be honest with yourself, guys. Not everything has to be advertised all the time. Follow the data, follow where you're making money, honestly,
Yeah.
and look at a larger window.
I always like to say, fall in love with the profit, not the product, right? Fall in love with the
Yeah.
profit. Brett, did you want to add one?
Yeah, I was going to say, make sure you've got clearly defined goals throughout the funnel. So your sponsored product ads, obviously it's a performance advertising play. It's very low in the funnel, high intent to purchase. Customers are actually using the words you want them to. So they're really likely going to buy. So you can definitely set a clean ACoS goal for products like that or campaigns like that. But as you go up to sponsored brands, you're going to have to give a little bit more breathing room for that campaign to bring in customers who aren't going to buy, because you are going up funnel and approaching customers before they've really considered what attributes of that product matter. And as you go to sponsored display, it's even more important that you have goals defined around that that allow you to optimize effectively. If you've got the same ACoS goal across all your campaigns, you're not going to see the results you want this year.
All right, Jessica, I'm going to see if you got one you want to throw in there. No, you're
Nope,
good.
I'll leave that to the advertising pros. My expertise definitely lies outside of this area.
So one thing I want to add to this, or maybe even spark as an additional debate, is a concept that we used to kind of push a while ago called the benefit of the doubt. And it was based around the idea that you can kind of stoke the Amazon algorithm by kind of restarting campaigns. Is that still a philosophy that you guys are using, or are you really only kind of using that when it's like the campaign's a mess and I need to do a campaign cleanup? I'm not just doing it for the spike in impressions.
I will say it's more of when we first come inside of an account and we're looking at it and we don't know what's being advertised where, or where we can find the products or keywords that are working. We do a refresh then. It doesn't make sense to just make new campaigns every week, because it's kind of a mixed bag where, okay, cool, you get the benefit of the doubt, but then also with these new campaigns, you have no history. So the history helps you out to some degree, but you don't want to have history for a really terrible structure. You want to have good history for a very clean structure where you can find your products with ease and know what's working.
All right, let's talk a little bit about scaling budget, right? So it's October. We are expecting demand to increase. How do I plan for and expand my budget between now and in the holiday period? And maybe what should I be prepared for?
I would suggest, before jumping straight to budget increases, just to reiterate what Edward mentioned at the beginning of the advertising conversation, cleanup. You don't know how much your budget is being wasted on unnecessary search terms, wasteful keywords, wasted products even in a given campaign or ad group. Now, beyond that, it's important to bear in mind that Amazon will give you more traffic with a higher budget. I want to say better traffic. Don't know about that, but more traffic, the higher your budget is. So I think that it's twofold: clean up, and then maybe start incrementally increasing your budget as the holiday season goes on.
Anyone want to add anything to that, or we can move on?
I'll say something.
Go for it.
Use the new budgets tab, because the budgets tab is sick. It allows you to see how long your campaigns are staying within budget without you having to just guess and check and look at your history tab. This will allow you to see Amazon's, might I add, sometimes crazy budget suggestions. Take them with a grain of salt, but monitor this. Like, just look in here, see how long your campaigns are staying inside of their budget over a certain period, and up them based on performance. I'm not one to just increase budgets to increase them. I want to see the correlation back from the sales coming from it. But going back to what Will said, we have seen you can work the algorithm. If you do increase the budget, Amazon's like, oh, they're ready to play. Let's get them some more traffic. But that won't necessarily be clean, qualified traffic. So be
Right.
careful there. Focus it more on the results you're getting from your campaigns.
Amazon has added a ton of different advertising units that sellers and brands can choose from. They are across all three parts of the funnel, right? From sponsored products to sponsored brands to display to video to people that are ready to buy to brand awareness. How do I plan my strategy, not just for Q4, but in general? How do I plan my strategy for where I need to be spending my budget, and or should I be? Or, how do I think about all of these things? Do I want to chase every new ad unit that's out there? How do I know strategies for maybe testing new ad units? Is the holidays the right time to test ad units, or do I want to stick with what works? I got a lot of questions around this.
Yeah, I will say, Jeff, I think it's similar to building a house. You start with a solid foundation, you're not with the roof. And so you're not going to start out with sponsored display and audience targeting and be successful. You're going to need to make sure you have all the fundamentals in place, that you have a strong automatic targeting campaign for your sponsored products and a complementary manual campaign, perhaps an ASIN targeting campaign or a category targeting campaign. Depending upon those brands' needs, they might need a bigger foundation or just a simple auto and manual pairing. But then they can go up to sponsored brands and they can leverage some of those keywords that worked well to test them in sponsored brands. And eventually they can start to layer in sponsored display. Now, sponsored display comes in a ton of different flavors. Using retargeting for your own products is usually a safer bet and can be done earlier, but going after in-market or audience targeting, usually a little bit more risky. And so you're going to want to make sure that everything else is in place so you don't have a leaky bucket. Because what good does it do you if you show your ad to 5 million people and there's no way for those customers to get back into your ecosystem when they're actually serious about searching and typing the keywords you want them to search? So make sure you have your search base covered and then move up funnel. Did we freeze, Jeff?
No, I think you guys are all good. I think it's me. I think my internet like cut out. Didn't kick me out, but it cut out. So hopefully they got your answer. And it sounds like they did. It just was me that you guys, and one of you all, if it happens again, one of you all just take over and ask each other questions.
Cool.
So I think that starts to put us on the path. And Amazon shared some interesting statistics with us because they were benchmarking our ad spend in comparison to other people. And I think that what was really interesting about it was, I would say that about 80% of the content that comes out of Amazon and Amazon advertising is in the display side of the business and all the opportunities that they're releasing within the display side of the business. But 70% of spend within Seller Labs ecosystem is in sponsored products. 28%, right? 27%, 28% is in sponsored brands, and about 3% is in sponsored display. Now, I asked them how that compares to other people in our space, right? How we as a company compare, and they said that we're about average. So think about that, right? The same funnel that Brett talked about, the majority of ad spend is happening at sponsored products. And so it's great to kind of talk about some of these other things that you can do, and they might be able to be some levers that you can pull in ways to grow your brand. But they're typically the tip of the iceberg. And you want to be working on that foundation as Brett spoke to. And I think one of the disservices that service providers, content providers in this space make is that we always talk about the new and the sexy and the, greatest ad unit you can be using. And we don't talk about the tried and true ones that actually, are the foundation for your success. And I think that's why it's great that the first thing Ed recommended was clean up your account and be looking at your sponsored ads, because that's not the sexy thing to be doing. the sexy thing to be doing is talking about video, and it's talking about targeting and all these other things that you can do. But when you guys are working with accounts and they're coming at you and hitting you up with these ad units that they want to try, how do you guys kind of balance that with those accounts to say, yeah, we can try that, but this is the core of what's going to drive your business?
I think it's all about basing it off of time. Like, I'll be straight up with them. I'm like, hey, that's awesome. I love sponsor brand video. It's my favorite ad type. But let's focus on the bottom of the funnel first and work our way up. And let's graduate those keywords and those products that have done well there up the funnel. So it is about just basing it out over time. I know a lot of people that are especially coming into Amazon right now, they're probably going to rush and launch every single ad type possible over the next month. And they're going to be very upset at the amount of wasted ad spend. So it is about justifying your movement up the funnel. Don't just do it because every other cool kid in the block is doing it. Do it because it works for you, and do it because you're actually seeing a return from your other ad types, and focus on what's working. But that being said, don't be scared to try new ad types. That's the only way you can know if it works for your brand and your category. You may have Joseph over here that sells in a different category. He gets different results for these types of campaigns than you may get. Still try them out and see if they actually work for you or not.
So how do you determine your budget in terms of like testing? Like, do you ask clients for like a testing budget? I'll tell you, like in running ads for Seller Labs, that's how we do it, right? We have our main budget that has a main return on investment. And then we have like a testing budget where we're trying things out. Is that a philosophy that Amazon sellers should take?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it depends upon how you look at your business and how risk adverse you are. But for most brands, isolating that budget out and treating it separately so that you know you're not expecting return on that is a safe way to go about it.
So go ahead, Julia.
Yeah, I know Brett mentioned this before, but not just isolating your budget, but maybe separating out your ACoS goals for different campaign types in order to be like most effective in your sponsored products, for instance, and then have a higher ACoS goal for your sponsored display just to have a little more room to grow there.
Yeah. So not just looking at it as like one number across your whole company, but different numbers for different products, categories, and even different ad types.
Right.
Having different goals. It's a good recommendation. This webinar has been chock full of little tips and tricks and things to be thinking about as we go into Q4. I'm going to just wrap up advertising here and say, you know, what's maybe something that's different about this holiday season than in past holiday seasons that might be impacting our advertising that we want to be thinking about.
Can I go out on a limb here?
Sure.
I've got one. So, you know, a recent change to go back to the budgets conversation we had earlier, a recent change Amazon made was they gave themselves a little bit more grace in how they use your budget across a window of time. So they went from, you know, having a little bit of an overage on one day of the week where they can pull budget from another day to giving themselves a bigger buffer, 25% buffer. So now they have a lot more leeway in how they utilize the dollars that you're allocating to advertising. So don't be surprised if you start seeing these daily seasonal spikes where Amazon sees a trend that we can't see yet, and they just take the opportunity because you've given them the budget and spend it. So I would definitely be paying attention to things like that when you're thinking about applying a budget, and even these experimental budgets. Know that there's a little bit more leeway in there. And if you're not tracking where you want to be one day, the next day could totally change this and be a night and day difference.
Anyone else?
Rather than an explicit difference between this year and previous years, bear in mind that comparisons to 2020 are very dangerous. 2020 was one of the landmark years in e-commerce. And if you go back and you say, well, a year ago, we made 3 times as much, that's understandable, but you need to be ready to not necessarily make that same amount of money this year. We may see better traffic or more traffic. But again, we've already talked about shortages and things like that. Those are going to prevent a lot of products from being available in general and may impact the shopping behaviors of Amazon shoppers.
Yeah, I like to say that it's we sometimes create self-fulfilling prophecies, right? So So we see the ships stuck offshore. So we identify those as shortages. So the media starts telling stories about how there's shortages and how there's going to be shortages on the shelf. So people go rush out to buy. And there may or may not be shortages, right? Like I think that the greatest example of our ability to create a demand when it didn't exist is what happened with GameStop earlier this year, right? And we're seeing that over and over again. If the news story comes out and tells you that Costco is running out of toilet paper, what do? You go to Costco and you buy toilet paper. And when they say that the gas stations are running out of gas, what do? You go to the gas station and you buy gas. And I think consumer behavior is driven by some of the media and messaging that we're hearing. And so I do think there's going to be this kind of short-term spike of people looking for holiday. I mean, I already got a gift from my dad. I didn't get a gift. I got a letter from my dad saying, hey, what do the kids want? There's going to be a shortage. I want to get it. So I do think people are starting to think that way. And as brands on the space, we need to be thinking that way. And if our consumers are out there looking for products and looking for things to buy now, we've got to get it out there and put it in front of them for them to be ready to buy. We won't know until Q1 whether Q4 was bigger this year than last year, and we might see it flat or we might see it decline because there were extra forces behind what happened last year. But I do think the timing is a pretty critical factor behind this that always seems to be kind of starting earlier and earlier. I mean, I saw Christmas trees and Christmas lights up before Halloween decorations. I thought that was kind of crazy.
That does make me think of another aspect of, I know you said we were done talking about advertising, Jeff, but I do want to go back.
Well, we're never done talking about it, but
right? Yeah. That's my whole life now at this point. But be mindful that your advertising performance is not the whole story. Remember, I said I hate mentioning ACoS, but a lot of people pin their ad performance on that. But there's going to be a lot of wish list adding, a lot of putting in shopping carts, not necessarily buying right after clicking that ad. Because I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, attribution window is 7 days on Amazon. So if they buy within that 7 days, gets attributed to your ad, everybody's happy. But that's not necessarily going to happen. The holiday season is rife with people, again, putting in shopping carts, putting on wish lists.
So if people have things in wish list and people have, I know the answer to this. I'm going to see if one of you guys do. If people have things in shopping carts and they have things in wish list, what's the best way to get their attention?
Change your price.
Yeah. Do you want to explain why, Brett?
It sends a notice to the users that have it in their cart or on the list, telling them the price changes. I love it and I hate it at times, but it gets my attention, so it works.
Yeah, and I don't think you have to change your price dramatically. Unfortunately, it would be great if Amazon ever gave us a statistic that told us like how many products we have in a cart or products we have in a wish list. That would be great to know and to see, because it would tell you I got a lot in a cart. I might want to offer a discount or drop my price a little bit to motivate that cart purchase. But that is the best way. And there are strategies that some sellers will change their price up a little bit, down a little bit, just to kind of nudge the cart, so to speak. Jessica, I'm just going to go around here, give everyone another minute or two to kind of wrap up. Tell me what else, just in general, Q4 2021, what's something else I should be thinking about or that may be different, or that, is something I need to be prepared for that I just haven't put on my agenda yet?
Well, I would hope that this is something that most people have put on their agenda, but I think it's worth mentioning again, even though people probably have heard this a number of times already leading up to Q4, but just having a diversified strategy for fulfillment. You're not going to be able to probably do all FBA this season, so make sure you have an FBM backup. And also for your FBA, I know a lot of people are recommending to do more multi-channel fulfillment, because all of that sales velocity does count towards your restock limits. So Amazon does look at multi-channel fulfillment and FBM to contribute to your overall total sales volume and decide if you're eligible for more restock limits.
Yeah, and that's kind of a change, right? Because for a while, Amazon didn't really look at what was happening with your multi-channel fulfillment. They just kind of saw it as like you using them as a fulfillment center. But Amazon's kind of encouraging you to put extra inventory at Amazon and fulfill your website using Amazon.
More data.
And that's a big change. And, for some companies that maybe don't have good shipping rates, or maybe they're closed, for holidays or religious events that occur, having that multi-channel fulfillment set up allows you to take those orders and process them through Amazon. Very interesting and it's actually, whenever I've done it, it's been cheaper for me to use Amazon's multi-channel fulfillment to process an order than it was to do it my own with our UPS rate.
For sure. There's some definite perks to using that this season more than ever.
Anybody else have anything they want to add to that kind of list of things that are different, or other things to think about?
I would say be prepared to be busy. I know that sounds stupid just to say that straight up, but you have to change your cadence for Q4 for checking on things. You have to be more involved inside of your account and your brand. You can't just be blasé about it. You have to be proactive, not reactive, and do as much as you can up front, but then stay within it as much as you can throughout the rest of Q4. Don't let things slip through the cracks. Be on top of it, be meticulous, be OCD if you need to, but get things done as it needs to happen.
Brett, Julia, Will, anybody want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the big thing I think to focus on from my perspective is timing. We're already seeing, record sales for Halloween products a couple weeks ago. So the timetables have shifted. Some customers know that 2-day doesn't mean 2-day prime anymore. It's not a guarantee. So they're starting to change their habits. And as they change those behaviors, I think it's going to continue into Q4. Just like you mentioned with scarcity, people are going to start searching sooner. And if you're merchandising based on this concrete calendar that you wrote out 6 months ago, might be time to revisit that and look at whether or not all of your assumptions are still true. And that's the best time to running your discounts and deals this year.
Yeah. Jessica, based on your suggestion, a question came in. Is it too late if I'm set up as FBM and it's been maintained well, but you want to do FBA? Is it too late to ship products in?
I don't think so. I mean, you never know from shipment to shipment. It could take a week and it could take 8 weeks. And I've seen both this time of year and I've seen both later in the season. So, I wouldn't send in all of your stock. If you're doing well with FBM, I would trickle in some FBA stock and see how it's going and see how things are received. There's definitely a spike to be had if you have your stock in and available for FBA and you get that Prime badge. So if you can swing it, it's worth trying, I think.
Yeah, and based on Amazon's dates that they've shared, you should be fine, right? They're saying to ship by November 1st, I think, to have it ready by Thanksgiving weekend.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, just always take that with a grain of salt, because
Right.
just shipping it by their deadline does not guarantee they will have your stock available for sale. So keep that in mind, but you are well ahead of the deadlines right now.
Yeah, and remember that Amazon also ship your stuff in, and you might send it to 1 location or 3 locations, but then Amazon's going to spread that out to all these locations. And so what happens is you want to probably make sure you also send enough inventory in so that when you send in 50 units, they'll keep 5 at the warehouse and make them available for sale, and they'll take the other 45 and start dispersing them. And that's what can take a few weeks before it's truly set up. And I wouldn't discount the fact that I think this year is going to be a lot of gift card purchases. I feel like we say that every year, but I feel like this year is going to be a lot of gift card purchases, because I do think there's going to be an inventory shortage issue. And I do think there are going to be bare shelves, whether they be virtual or physical. And I think people are going to get gift cards, because maybe what they want isn't available. So stocking up for and preparing for January, and remembering that the holiday season runs through the return gift card season is critical in thinking about this. Like, we used to think of the holiday as Cyber 5 till Christmas. Well, now the holiday is really like October 1st through maybe January 31st. Also, a couple other things that I just had some notes that didn't get mentioned. Expect your holdback from Amazon to increase. As your sales increase, your holdback from Amazon will increase. And in addition, with it being a longer return period, there's a chance that Amazon also maintains a larger holdback because they don't want everything, paid back, and then you've got a large amount of return. So just kind of keep some of those things in mind as you're doing some of your planning. Every dollar of sale doesn't always equal a return dollar that you'll get from the Amazon ecosystem because of that holdback. And the other is, really good big sellers are already thinking about their next order. And so quickly after the holidays is the Chinese New Year, and the factories will shut down for 3 weeks. And so it's kind of crazy based on like people, and they're talking about their current preparations. But as you start looking ahead, you need to actually start thinking about getting your manufacturing lined up now, because the crunch of manufacturing leading up to the Chinese New Year, I think, is going to be worse than we've ever seen before. There's been rolling blackouts through China due to energy issues and concerns. There's obviously shipping, issues and concerns, and all of these things can compound over time as you start to look at your next set of inventory. So if you normally didn't order your inventory till maybe the middle to the end of January, you may want to start placing some of those orders in December. Those are the only ones I had on my list. Anybody else want to add anything before I wrap us up?
Only that, as Edward mentioned, the cadence needs to increase. Don't, or if you have thought about having someone else take care of it in the past, and then you ultimately decided against it, I think it may be time to revisit that. Things are only getting more complex on the Amazon.
Yeah, and the complexity is coming in a lot of different directions, right? The complexity is coming from pressure from competitors. It's coming from additional ad units. It's coming from your ability, the necessity of you being good at multiple things, right? You used to be able to be successful on Amazon by just being good at a handful of things. Now you need to be good at a plethora of things. And sometimes you need to reach out to the experts. These are our experts. I thank you guys for sharing with us. These guys are available to answer questions if you guys have them about your brand, about your advertising. If you want an advertising report to kind of see maybe where some cleanup needs to be, you can reach out to us, reply to any of the emails that you get from Seller Labs, and just say, I want a cat. And we'd be happy to dive into your advertising and give you some help. Now, we've been in the business since 2012, 8 years now. Oh my God, we're getting old. That has been started off of our business and feedback. And so I want to end this by asking you guys how we did today. So if you could just go to the chat window, and on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the best and 1 being the worst, let us know whether this webinar was worth your time, energy, and effort. If we got anything less than a 5, then I don't know what's going to happen to Edward this time. He cries.
I knew it. I knew it. I'm going to cry
cries
again. And I'll turn off the camera if that happens, though. Okay.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, if you give me less than a 5, tell me why, because we're always looking to improve. So go ahead and let us know how we did today in the chat box by giving us a score of 1 to 5. I want to thank everybody. I want to wish you all a very happy and healthy and profitable holiday season. And again, if you have any questions or concerns, we're here to help. Please reach out to us. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.